Test 1 2 1 2.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right. Hopefully, folks have had coffee. I was told that we couldn't bring any drinks in here, so mine is out there somewhere. Anyway, I'm Dr. Anna Gonzalez. I am the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Welcome to our Parents as Partners session. Just FYI, I think some of you have been getting, all of you probably, some note cards to write questions on. At some point later, I will remind folks that you can pass that to people on the aisle, where the aisles are, and there will be students and staff that will be picking that up and will be typing out the questions for me in this iPad that I'll be reading. So just wanted to let you all know that. Well, 2020 has been a year, and now it looks like 2021. We're saying the same thing. But we are excited for those of you who were able to go last night at our socially distanced outdoor social. Raise your hands, I'd like to see. Oh, good. I hope you all had fun. Sorry about the traffic coming out afterwards. It's just kind of part of it when you have a lot of people, but I hope you had fun. And I hope you could see how we are trying to instill a sense of normalcy, a sense of student life in a safe manner as possible for your students. So thank you for those who were able to go and see that. Some of the things that I want to say here in my brief remarks before I turn it to my wonderful colleagues who will introduce themselves in a little bit is that our hopes and dreams for this year is even greater, right? Because of what we've gone through. And yet I still think of college in terms of what we see in the media, in terms of that it's all great or it's so horrific, and it seems like it's in the extremes. And I want to say that as parents, number one, you're going to get that call from your student who might have had a bad day. We don't know what bad is, right? It can range from just not doing well, from a test, from not getting along with their roommate, or just cranky, waking up for an 8 o'clock class. And you're going to want to pick up that phone and call me, or call their RA, or call our Dean of Students. And I ask you to think about before you make that call. Because maybe in the next day or in a few hours, when you text them or they tell you, they're like, oh, having a great day. We just walked over to Clementine's. And you're like, what's happening? They're just developing and they're just not with you every day. And so you're going to start thinking of the worst and only expecting the best. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes there's going to be some wonderful, great days, most of it. And sometimes it's not going to be. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we partner together on both sides. But also that at some point we're going to trust each other, and you're going to trust our experience, not just on stage, but the people outside of this room who work with students every single day and care for them and love them. Brené Brown once says, raising children who are hopeful and who have the courage to be vulnerable means stepping back and letting them experience disappointment, deal with conflict, learn to assert themselves, and have the opportunity to fail. Your student will grow into maturity, this is now me, your student will grow into maturity, develop their potential, and stretch in new directions. Doing this means that it will not always be calm or comfortable. It will not be free from conflict or debate. Growing produces pains, and sometimes, usually I would say, learning requires discomfort. There will be times when they will be reassured and validated. Many, many times they will be reassured. And they will also be provoked and pushed, challenged and tested. They will discover that they always aren't right. I know you're shocked about that. And that their perspective can sometimes be limited and incomplete. And they will develop more critical and sophisticated ways of making sense of the world and their role in it. And that is doing college, and that is doing WashU. And in all of that, I also promise, because I like to have some fun, that they will also have fun in a very healthy way. So with that, I'd like to ask my colleagues, each one of them, starting with Amy, to please introduce themselves, say their name, their title, and I asked them how long they've been at WashU, and then 3 things that you as family members should know about their office and how they can work with your student.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see all of you here today. My name is Amy Whitman, and I am the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs for Career Development. And my team is here to deliver the professional growth curriculum and to support the career education of your students. We are so happy that they and you are here. So Dr. Gonzalez asked each of us to think about 3 things that we thought would be helpful for you to know about our approach and our work with your students. So I'd like to share those with you today. So first, please know that each person on our team in the Career Center finds great joy in coaching, teaching, and supporting your students, who we also know are your children. Our team aspires to guide each WashU student to be fully prepared to launch into an intentional first destination pathway that aligns with and amplifies their skills, their interests, their gifts, and their goals. Second, please know that career education is a 4-year developmental process. So our hope for your students is that they will proactively engage with the many advisors and resources offered by the Career Center and many of our partners on campus during their first year, and that they will continue to seek out many opportunities for experiential learning, for ongoing skill development, and that they will seek counsel and feedback throughout the entirety of their WashU career. And then finally, the third piece that I wanted you to know about our work is that students show up to work with us in so many different ways. So some of our students are very actively engaged in exploration and discovery, while others may already be focused on more clearly defined career goals and plans. But please know that regardless of where your student is, we are here to meet them where they are. And we hope to prepare all of our students in their career development learning and growth throughout their Washington University journey. So thank you for your trust in us, and I very much look forward to working with you. And I'll pass this along to my colleague, Mark.
Thank you. And also, Dr. Kamimura Jimenez, before you speak, if folks already have some questions under note cards, feel free to just pass it to the middle, and our students and staff will just quietly come down, but no big deal. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Kamimura Jimenez, and I am the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and also the Dean of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. In my area, we have several different offices that work with our international students and scholars, religious, spiritual, and ethical life, as well as our TRIO programs, our Deneb scholars, and I'm like, wondering if I'm missing one. And also looking at our communities that are also resource impacted. You know, when I think about the work that we do that's important for you to know and also that we share with our students, it's that we focus on 3 main things in our work, and that is identity, education, and advocacy. And so when we think about identity, we know that our students have come here from all over the world, but also many different kinds of lived experiences. And so when you come together, you're also learning about how others have had different experiences and how you may share even something that is similar to someone else, but have seen that or experienced it from different lenses. And so what we do is try to get students to understand each other. And you'll hear me talk about this potentially more as we go through some of our questions here, but that understanding each other is such a big part of the identity development of our students. You'll hear us talk about development as well. That this is a place of growth, and growth sometimes meaning really engaging with folks who are different than you. The other part around education is that while we have given our children and our the students that you've come here with an incredible education and given them every opportunity that you could, there is still always more to learn. And what's important that what we have here is each other. What we learn from each other, I think, is sometimes some of the most valuable educational lessons that your students will have when they're here on campus. And so how that happens, what it looks like, will be all over the map. And some of it will be will hurt their experience. They'll feel hurt by how they heard something. And our job is to kind of have a conversation with them about what they heard, how they interpreted it, and what was meant. We talk about intent versus impact a lot in our work in our office as well. The third is advocacy, and that's that our students are students, and that sometimes there are things on our campus that we need to shift or change, and so we advocate for them and their experience to make it better, make it stronger, and listening to them and thinking about how we can enhance the work as educators on our campus. And so we'll do a lot of advocacy work about thinking about all the different parts of their experience and how we can improve that. All right, I'm going to pass off to Dr. Leggett.
Good morning. My name is Kiwana Leggett. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. I get the pleasure of working with our Office of Residential Life and Housing and our First Year Center. So first, let me say welcome home. Hopefully you had a smooth move-in process. If you did, my job is done. So is everybody moved in? Yes. Actually, the work is just beginning. So with my offices, the Office of Residential Life is here to support community development, but I look at it at the basic needs of Maslow's hierarchy. We want to provide safe, well-maintained residential living spaces where we can fulfill the basic needs of our students to ensure that they have a place to put their heads down, to build community, but also to go get dining needs fulfilled. And so we're very excited to welcome home our new bears. The other piece of our residential life program is the self-actuality of really getting to know each other and building a community. We have a team of RAs who will be supportive of the community development efforts, but also will be there for the highs and the lows that students are experiencing. So not only does our live-in staff include our resident advisors, they also include a team of professional staff, which we call residential college directors. These are master's level professionals who all have advanced degrees in higher education in supporting students in residential communities. And so you have a team of RAs, student staff, but also professional staff. The other added benefit of living in residential life is also faculty fellows who live in the residential communities. And so we have folks that are tenured professors living in our residence halls that can help build community outside of the classroom. So residential life includes our live-in staff and also our residential operations team, which you got to see really spotlighted yesterday in our move-in efforts. If you got a housing assignment, that's our residential operations team. We also have a team of housekeepers who are the heart and soul of our operations to keep our buildings well-maintained, and also who are going to see students probably more than I'm going to see students. And so our housekeepers really drive our community efforts to ensure that they're connected and keeping our spaces clean for our students. Lastly, we have, again, our faculty residential program that includes the growth of our residential colleges. And so raise your hand if you're in Beyond Boundaries and other residential community efforts that we've put together to build good living, learning communities. And so residential life has an array of programs that help build our sense of community on campus. And I'm excited that we are growing in our residential numbers this year. Last year, obviously, we're maintaining our 50% 60% occupancy, and now we're excited to continue to increase our occupancy and allow students the opportunity to build that community. And so it's going to be a great year in residential life. The next office is the First Year Center. And if you've been here for 5 minutes, you've seen the energy from our WUSAs and our First Year Center staff. They're here to engage and get our students connected through Bare Beginnings. Last night was just a little glimpse of the excitement that our First Year Center brings. And so they're here to support new students in their transition and also family programs. And so the two offices combine to ensure that first year students are having a seamless transition. And if they're not, we have staff that are going to be here and support and provide resources. So it's going to be a pleasure to work with you all as partners this year. And again, welcome home.
Woo.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Wilde. I think I have the longest title of anybody up here on the stage. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Dean of Students, and Chief of Staff. I think I also have been here the longest of anybody up here on the stage. I am just starting my 23rd year working here at Washington University. It's always good when people applaud for you for how old you are. And then I also am a graduate of Washington University, and I know I have a few classmates out there, so keep your stories and comments to yourselves. So welcome, everybody. This is very exciting that you're here. I'll just say a couple things about my role here on the Senior Student Affairs team. Dr. G last night was kind of making an analogy in her remarks to the different roles that student affairs professionals play on this campus, and I have to think that when she was talking about the bouncer and security, she unfortunately was talking about me. But the Dean of Students role here, as it is at most universities, is responsible for helping students when they make mistakes, and we will have students every year who make mistakes. Our goal in that process when a mistake is made is to try to be as developmental as possible. We know all of us on this stage have made mistakes, and it's important to us that our students learn and improve when that does happen. The other thing I'll say about my role is I have the great privilege, alongside colleagues on the stage here, of really working to support our student leadership programs. I hope all of you, as your students were thinking about Washington University, recognize what a tremendous place this is to grow, both inside the classroom with our outstanding faculty, but also outside the classroom. You're going to hear from my colleague Anthony a little bit about some of our athletic leadership programs, but we have over 400 registered student groups at Washington University. Yes, most of them met all last year throughout the pandemic and are excited to get back to a little bit more in-person activity. We have over 30 sports clubs at Washington University, and all of those provide opportunities for students to find their passion, to find things that they connect with. Sometimes it's connected to their academic course of study, and sometimes it's not. And so our goal is to really find those opportunities to help students in that way. And then the last thing I'll just acknowledge, as many of you know, is I also moved a first-year student into the South 40 yesterday myself. Our oldest son, Jack, moved in. And this is a tough panel for me because my best ally and my best critic is sitting in the audience. No, don't point her out. Let her alone. Oh, there she is. But I promised her I was going to try not to get too emotional on this panel, because I don't know about you guys, but yesterday was a pretty emotional day. I've done this for over 20 years, and it still hit home that we're sending our first away from home. So thank you. Congratulations. I look forward to talking with you more.
Rob, you need to remember, if you want a happy life, happy wife. So, Miss Wilde, thank you. You're probably the real MVP. He's just on the stage. I'm Anthony Asma, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and also the Director of Athletics, and I also oversee recreation. I want to spend a little bit talking about our state-of-the-art recreation center, but it's bigger than just the four walls. We also do things such as outdoor trips, and in addition to that, we do cooking classes. It's all about trying to create community and continue to piggyback what's happening throughout campus as far as trying to create these social connections, these opportunities for development and growth. as it pertains to athletics, the only way to justify having an athletic department on a college campus is to really measure how are we helping and how are we maximizing growth in these student athletes. We have about 580 student athletes, 19 programs. The first is intellectually. Our goal is to have every student athlete graduate with a world-class degree in one hand. And then there's a set of skills that you learn in your pursuit to be a champion that will benefit you in all future endeavors. And so the hope is with a world-class degree in one hand, a chance to compete for championship jury in the other, but ultimately during these 4 years to be prepared for the next 40 years of success. So I want to brag a little bit on our student athletes and the families that we're about to include as far as the first year student athletes that we're about to welcome to the Bear family. Our graduation rate is 99%. Thank you. That's 4 points higher than the student body. Our GPA, average GPA is 3.7. It's 1/100th of a point higher than the student body, but still, we keep score, right? And probably most important, because I remember my mom asking this question when I went on my recruiting trip to Vanderbilt and they talked about all these different majors. She kept asking this same question. So when I got here, as well as what I did previous to coming to WashU at Columbia, what's the job placement rate? And we probably shouldn't use the word job. What's the career placement rate? 96%. That's 4 points higher than the student body. But who's keeping count? I'm saying this because the value of this WashU experience is bigger than what's happening in the classroom, as some of my colleagues alluded to. And this place is different because it really prioritizes relationships and engagement. And I think that's why we've been able to have a level of success in athletics. And in addition to that, what we've been able to inspire as far as creating a holistic campus that values wellness. And I'm really appreciative to be back. It's been a long 18 months. Got a chance to see some teams actually have scrimmages and practice together. It's so meaningful, and thank you.
Parents, welcome. It's good to have you here. Thank you for being as invested and aware and present as you are to be able to bring yourselves here, help move your students in, and I'm really grateful to have you here. My name is Kirk Dewer. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Health and Wellbeing on this campus. I have been here for 2 years. A hell of a time to come to WashU, right? It's been actually a fantastic time to be able to come to WashU, and you'll hear a theme throughout kind of my commentary. The reason it's been a great time, and I would do it all over again, is because of the fantastic colleagues that I have here on the stage and those that I work with elsewhere. These are some super dedicated individuals who are very, very committed to being able to make sure that your students get the best experience at a university that they possibly can. So with that, I have the privilege of being able to serve and work with our Student Health Center. It's had a big role in the last couple of years. Our pharmacy, our counseling center, our Relationship and Sexual Violence Prevention Center, Disabilities Resource, our what we call WashU Cares, which is a service that helps our students get connected to resources that they might need when they're having some sort of a struggle. And I think I got them all. In any case, these are the entities that are the student-facing health service folks that are really, really good at their job. So one of the first points that I wanted to make is we have some outstanding professionals who are experts in their field, both nationally and with regard to precision and pinpoint services that they need to be able to offer. And so they've dedicated themselves to serving exactly this population that your students represent. So they're really good at being able to what they do, and without them, this past year would have been something quite different. So we're extremely grateful to be able to have them here. Number two, we're excited about the possibility of being able to work with your students as they go through what is a huge and monumental transition time. This time we call individuation, as they sort of break away from you as parents a little bit and also move into their own in terms of some of their thinking. You've spent the last years as parents and family trying to be able, I was going to say 17, but sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. Developing them and being able to help guide their thinking. And now we sort of set them out there on that lake on their own. And for some of us as parents, when my son went away to college, we were excited for him to go. When my daughter went away to college, we were a little less excited for her to be able to go, and it's sort of inversely related to the amount of responsibility we thought that they would have, but nonetheless, that was my experience. So as your students go on this individuation process, there's a couple of things that I think are important for you to know. One, your level of engagement with them is going to have a higher need than their level of engagement with you. And whether you are very local or whether you are from afar, be aware that their demands are a little bit different. I had an opportunity to be able to speak to a panel of students who were talking to parents on one occasion. And a parent kind of in the back in the middle asked, how often do you talk to your mom? She was very concerned about how often this young man was going to talk to his mom. And he said, we talk all the time. And he went on to explain a little bit about the nature of their conversations and so forth. And this thoughtful mother then asked, okay, but how often do you talk? He said, like every month. So again, your needs and their needs may be slightly different, and be clear that this doesn't reflect on your parenting skills, right? As they move into their own and as they start to develop some of these friendships and relationships, you are a little bit out of sight, out of mind, but you've built a foundation there. And the most important thing that I can tell you is to figure out how to engage with your students and stay connected to them at a level that they're going to see you as a resource. Some of us have a need to be able to be overly involved and persistent in engaging with them and talking to them more than they want to talk to us, and then that makes them a little resentful. Others, we sit back too much, and we wait for them to come to us. And the most important thing that I can tell you is to find that right balance. And just for a moment, I want to speak to the men in the audience. We're horrible at having conversations. So let's just start there with a baseline. And the way that translates to our students is we often want to be able to solve their problems because that's what we've been taught and trained to do. When our kid calls home, and as Dr. G was alluding, has had a bump in a test or some struggle elsewise, our instant response is going to be, here's what you need to do to fix it, young man. And the first time my son had a struggle on a math test and did that, I know this. And I did the same thing. And he was like, thanks, Dad, and he hung up. It occurred to me that what he needed from me was understanding and empathy and connection and be able to give him some validation. So the best tidbit and biggest takeaway message you can hear from me today is when your students call home, ask them any question that comes to mind that helps you to understand what it feels like to be them in that moment. Again, parents, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
All right. I really am the luckiest person because I get to work with wonderful colleagues. And as you can always email me, Anna, ANNA.gonzalez@wuchstil.edu. Like the chancellor, sometimes I don't get to read all the emails, but when I see the subject or the question, maybe one of them will be the ones responding to you on behalf of me in the office. So also wanted to let you know the expertise, the deep bench, as they say, that we have in student affairs. Before I go through the questions, now that we are really packed in a good way here, I wanted to see who is in the room. And I know that this is also being, I think, streamed or recorded. So hello from those not in this physical space. But just wanted to get a sense of who's here. So if you can just do a woo, I know, cheerleader in me. Those families and parents from the East Coast, let's hear you. All right, stay safe out there. All right, the West Coast. The South, big South. That's Kiwana. Midwest. All right, Missouri. I got Missouri. All right, Hawaii and Alaska and Puerto Rico. Oh, there you go. Hello. Our international families, if anyone, yay, they're like, yay, they're raising their hands. Thank you. All righty. Well, we do have some questions that have been coming in, so I'm going to ask my colleagues to do this. We do these speed rounds from when we have our meetings, and so I'm going to ask them to be as brief as they can. And there's some more folks that are raising their hand for their, if you could pass it to the middle, so that way they can pick it up there, that would be great. All righty. So the first question for Dr. Leggett is, can the student change their housing option? If not this semester, how about in January?
Thank you. Great question. We are very, very excited that we have such a resounding interest in residential life housing. That's a nice way to say that we are fully occupied right now. We have the largest first-year class, and so right now we do not have occupancy to move folks. However, within the first 2 weeks, we always look at where our vacancies are, and we'll work with students on a case-by-case basis. But certainly in January, there will be a little bit more opportunities to look at what spaces they are. I will say that we, again, have staff that will support students who are going through any transitional issues, so any roommate conflicts, and so we don't just leave you on the island. We will certainly work with you all, even if it's not a room change, but there will be future opportunities for room changes, but right now we're fully occupied.
Thank you for that. Next question for Amy. You talked a little bit about it's a 4-year or it's a process for careers. However, the question from the families is, but when should they actually start going to the career center? And do they only, if they're a business major, two-parter, do they only go to Olin or can they use the career center as well?
Thank you for that great question. So our career development process at WashU is a 4-year developmental process, and so I would certainly encourage your students to begin this during the first year. So a few specific suggestions for the first year. I think the first year is a great time to begin some assessment, so paying attention to those experiences where students are learning skills, they're discovering where they're feeling energy and excitement, and then starting to have conversations with their advisors, with their faculty, with their peers about what that might mean for them, how that might start to translate into future career pathways. I also would encourage our first-year students to attend at least one Career Center program to start to connect with our alumni, our employer partners, start to explore potential possibilities in the world of work. And then finally, start to think about some type of pre-professional experience for summer 2022. So that could be an internship or shadowing or a micro experience of some sort. And we can work with your students to help support that. The second question for our students who are at the Olin Business School, they are welcome and encouraged to participate in all of the career resources that are available through the Central Career Center. There's also the Weston Career Center, which provides additional support for students who are in the Olin Business School. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Anthony. Anthony, what advice do you have for a student when it comes to living in a healthy and balanced lifestyle? And also, what kind of you talked a little bit about the cooking programs. Do you work with a dietitian to do that?
And I got to answer that in a minute. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe 2 minutes.
Here's the advice that I would have. We need your children to be very proactive in scheduling health and wellness and making it a priority. There will always be challenging obligations and all that, but I think as they would with academics, they should be doing that with health and wellness. So whether that's going to the rec centers, scheduling a walk in Forest Park, taking time every morning to meditate. I mean, you have to prioritize that. And the best time to do it is now. It's always now, right? That's the best time to do it, to get into a habit of doing that. Before COVID, Kirk and I used to work out in the morning at the rec center. There's a community there. I remember students giving me a fist pump. Missed 2 days, they like, hey, where you been? you've fallen behind. So there's a community there that kind of keeps you encouraged and keeps you focused and keeps you doing it. As it pertains to the rec center, it's very important for us to do things outside of those four walls to continue to help build community, whether it's doing yoga at the Arch downtown, whether it's outdoor trips to really kind of create better, stronger community and social connection. I've been really impressed by how well that staff makes it more than just working out, pool, that whole YMCA approach. It's really about this process and this journey of discovery, learning, as well as doing it with others that has been really impressive, and that probably explains why they get such high marks, not only in surveys of our students, but also nationally as far as how they're ranked with the programming that they do. Did I do it in time?
You did great. A little over, but it was good.
Yeah.
Cooking class.
Cooking class,
question.
yes.
They want to know if you work with a dietitian.
Yes, we do work with a dietitian. Sometimes it's called a cooking class when we have it themed, such as a couple years ago, we kind of themed it around the Olympics. And then we have dining with a dietitian. We want to get real specific based on the feedback that we heard from people who utilize the facility as far as what they want to learn. And I'll just share this real quick. You know, when you grocery shop, you should stay on the outside aisles, right? Processed food is down the aisles. That's what I love about our dietitians. They bring real practical things that our students can remember and apply. And so that's why we do two different versions, cooking classes and dine with a dietitian.
Thank you. By the way, you know what I just realized? It's always so fun when you watch the first-year student go to the grocery store by themselves. I kind of sit back there and kind of giggle a little and be like, let me help you out. Anyway, thank you, Anthony. All right, Kirk, I got a couple of questions for you. If my student is feeling unwell, where should they go and who should they tell? Very broad. The other one is a quick one. I have health insurance question. Who in Habith can I talk to for assistance?
So the first question is a little bit complicated because we try and provide so many different avenues for people to be able to speak to individuals to all funnel them to the right places. So if the student's not feeling well, it depends on how they're not feeling well, but certainly any of these avenues will get them there. One, they can absolutely talk to their RAs and RCDs. These individuals are absolutely fantastic resources to be able to guide folks. Two, our WashU Cares that I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is literally their job, is to guide students to the resources, both on and off campus, that students might need if they're not doing well. More importantly, though, the offices that we're looking for, if they've got a health concern or question, they should always just start at the Student Health Center down there on the South 40. So Habith Health Center is a great place to start for any kind of physical ailments or struggles that you might have. And if a student is struggling, having a hard day, dealing with difficult emotions, calling our counseling center will always get them in contact with somebody. We always have somebody available on call. We've got someone that screens our calls. We've got people that they can walk in and see. Now, we do get very busy, but nonetheless, we make a priority to make sure that someone would be available to speak to a student. So all of these different avenues will get you in to be able to see somebody. And the most important thing I can share with you, especially around the mental health services, is, as Anthony shared, the best time to start is now. So typically, if we're having struggles psychologically, embedded in the university environment is stress and change, as Dr. Gonzalez pointed out. And if we're going through some change, we're going to be stressed at some level, and that's a good thing. That's part of where growth and development comes from. But if we have questions about when it's time to be able to see a counselor, counselor is not usually the first thing that we think of. And so by the time you've thought of that question, or by the time your student has thought of that question, it's time to go in and see somebody. So call our counseling center and you can get in and see someone pretty quick. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, another question. This one is for Mark.
Forgot the second part, the health centers.
Yes.
Specifically,
Insurance.
you call the Student Health Center and talk to either Ashley Maholey or Aaron Doherty. They can answer all of your questions about student health insurance, and they'll be out at the fair today. And if you can't remember who that was, send me an email and I'll connect you to the right person. My apologies for that.
No, thank you. The next question is for Mark. Can you talk a little bit about the support that you have specifically for students of color, underrepresented students, and how they are made to feel welcome here?
Sure. So We have a lot of student organizations on our campus that students can participate in, and we also encourage them to be involved in organizations that don't always align with their identities. But on our campus, we have several professional staff that are in place to support students who come from minoritized backgrounds, from our LGBT community, and in the duck, which is just on the other side here, on the first floor is the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, and that is where a lot of our students kind of find home. We really encourage our students to use that space. We have some couches. They're a little industrial styled, but needless to say, they still go in there. There's a TV, but there's always some kind of snacks or something like that. But there's also a lot of conversations. We have this table. It's this wood table. And what I realized when we all left in the pandemic is that the conversations that were happening at that table were missing. And so I'm looking forward to our students coming back to that table and having the most extraordinary conversations about everything you can imagine, about which coast is better to live on and why, but also asking some really critical questions about their experiences on our campus and what that means, and kind of digesting it with each other. I think those pieces are things that happen in that space, but we also know that this is happening in Res Life, it's happening in their student orgs, it's happening in their internships, and it's happening in their classrooms. And so we hope to facilitate some of those things as students return, and look forward to that conversation continuing.
Great, thank you, Mark. The next one is for Rob, and if others want to jump in also as well. This is about COVID. Couple of questions. How has the university prepared for COVID and the Delta variant this fall? What will happen if my student tests positive? And what if there is a large outbreak? And then the last question for that is, will the students be able to get booster shots from WashU when they become available to the public?
Wait, are we in a global pandemic?
Yes. I know, welcome.
Yeah, okay, great questions. I'm going to try to remember all of the layers to that one. First of all, I do want to give a public service announcement tomorrow night at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. My colleague, Dr. Leggett, as well as Dr. Cherie LeBlanc from the Habif Health and Wellness Center, and Vice Provost Jennifer Smith will be on a very specific COVID-related fall panel where we'll talk a little bit about our plans. I do want to assure everybody we have been actively working on campus safety as it relates to COVID, basically nonstop since February of 2020, and that has not stopped this summer. Certainly one of the things that we have going for us here at Washington University is that we have required all members of our community, students, faculty, and staff, to comply with the vaccine requirement. None of us knew how this was going to work for students when we announced it in April, but I'm happy to tell you we are in very good shape there. We do have an exemption process, certainly for medical or religious exemptions. The numbers of those exemptions are very, very small, less than 0.5% of the student body. So, yeah. So very appreciative of that. As you all know, and as we can see looking out here, we did at the end of July, given the rise of the Delta variant and on the recommendations of our own infectious disease and public health faculty, institute an indoor masking requirement, even though we realize most of our campus is vaccinated when we have guests and other times. We felt this was an important additional layer to our safety. We do have plans should students test positive. We know there are going to be breakthrough infections. And so as we had last year, we do have housing set aside for residential life students, both quarantine housing and isolation housing that can be made available. We deliver meals there, and we've actually Kiwana's team has gotten quite good at managing this program. And then, as we are, I think we need to just keep remembering, all of us, us as we're living in a global pandemic is that we need to be flexible, and we will change plans if we need to. We're ready to. We've discussed many different contingencies here, and if we need to change trajectory at any time, we will do so if it's in the best interest of our community. Today, though, as we sit here today, as Dr. G said in her opening comments, our goal is to continue to try to have as robust and in-person residential experience as we can, and we're going to continue to try to do that in a way that has layers of safety and mitigation in place. And I should see if Dr. Dewer or actually Dr. Leggett may have.
Just because there were several layers to that question, yes, we are and currently are working on plans to figure out how to be able to give that booster shot should there students extend to that point. Certainly we're looking to be able to do that both here on campus and making available opportunities slightly off campus as well. So those should be available. And as Rob said, lots of contingency plans are being discussed, and each iteration moves where communal transmission rates and other kinds of things, and different variants and so forth. So we're trying to be as nimble as that. Now, your experience of that and their students' experience of that is a little bit of a struggle because it does ebb and flow, and we have to be able to be responsive to those kinds of things. And the whole goal, the primary foundational agenda is to be able to keep the students and the community as safe as possible here on this campus. So when you see iterations and changes, rest assured that we have some world-class experts guiding us in those decisions on why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you. And Dr. Dewer, since you have the mic, I'm going to ask you if you can answer this question. If my student has medication that needs to be stored, where do they take that?
It depends on the nature of the medication. So there are some certainly that they can keep in their res halls and self-administer and so forth. There are others that may need to be able to come to our HABIF Health and Wellness Center. Again, just be able to call HABIF and ask them about what the protocols are with regard to the specific medication that your student has, and we can help you with that.
Thank you. Dr. Leggett, question for you. How many students live on campus, and do students after their first year typically have to move off campus?
Currently this year, we're opening, very excited, 4,500 residents. This is a big step for us as we only housed 2,500 students last year. And I kind of chuckled in terms of the last question about can students continue. Until before COVID, our students were guaranteed housing for 4 years. And so it was required for the first year, but we continue to house students. But because we de-densified our residence halls last year, we did have to ask juniors and seniors to move off campus. But now that we are going back to our current occupancy levels, we are continuing to guarantee that housing experience for all 4 years. And so if the conditions remain the same, we're thankful that we can continue to house students beyond their first year.
Thank you. Rob, Dr. Wilde, as parents, if our student is struggling academically, will WashU inform us? Yes. No, I'm kidding. No, Rob.
That depends. Most likely not. And so, most of your students are 18, and we treat them respectfully as adults. And so this is, as Dr. Dewer was kind of talking earlier about sort of the relationship changing and the communication changing, being able to create spaces for your students where they can have comfortable conversations with you about their academics is going to be really important. Let's be honest about this here. Every single one of your students was a superstar in high school. It's true. I mean, you wouldn't be here if they were not near or at the top of their class. But when you arrive to a place like Washington University where 100% of the students are superstars from high school, not all will be the superstar that they were in high school. And so what we try to do here is create opportunities for students to learn how to learn in college and to adjust their study habits, to adjust how they prepare for exams. Actually right after this session, all of the 4 undergrad graduate schools will be holding information sessions specific to their academic discipline where they will talk a little bit about this question in a little bit more detail. All of your students have academic advisors, and that really is the first place for them to be working when they are having academic questions arise. We do send letters home if a student has some academic action occur to them at the end of the semester. But other than that, it is really going to be incumbent upon your student to communicate with you how they're doing academically. And I think that's all part of this really important transition to young adulthood and how they manage their lives independently.
Thank you. I have two more questions, and I'm going to wrap up with a question for me. One is, Anthony, how can my student get involved with club sports or intramurals?
That's a great question. All they have to do is reach out to one of our superstars, Jamaica Cannon, or they can just come to Summers Recreation Center and somebody can help them at the front desk.
And finally, Amy, how can students who are first years get opportunities for internships?
Thank you for that question. So our office hosts an online database called Career Link, where we have internship listings representing all different industries, all different geographic locations. So that would be one tool that students may use in terms of supporting their internship search. And we also support a more holistic approach, which would include networking, would include perhaps creating a target list of places that might be a good fit and very aligned with your students' interests and goals. So we can work with students and to help create this holistic strategy to land those internship opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question is for me. What is the top concern that you have for the class of 2025 this year, particularly considering we are on an 18 plus months of COVID life? So I want to say that I think about that question, and my normal answer, and I still hold this true, is concerned that students who are such high achievers, and I've worked at places where they were all high achievers as well, is that they don't know how to ask for help or somehow think that they shouldn't. And so I want to encourage students to continually ask for help. I ask for help all the time. Today I saw a staff member, Reggie, where is the theater? I mean, I always ask for help. It's a good thing. And so I think they're somehow thinking that asking for help is a sign of weakness, right? So encourage them to ask for help. The next is stress. Our students are, we talk about it a lot, they're excellent students and they do so much. And so there's lots of stress that accompanies that. And related to that, and the one that I really think about this year, is the idea of catching up. That somehow we talk about 2020 as a lost year. And actually, I learned how to bake in 2020. I mean, I grew plants. I mean, they lived. And those are huge things for me. 2020 was a tragic year, and parts of 2021 is, but it was not a lost year. And our students are feeling like they want to catch up, and I'm a little nervous about that because that means they're going to go faster, they're going to want more. And the idea that I think and I talk about it, this is a marathon. Pace yourself. So normally I would say that, but now because of what had happened in the pandemic and what's happening, they're going to want it even more and faster and so much. And, I'm going to really try to work with our team to say, take a deep breath, slow it down, go to the rec center, eat well, read a book that's not from your class, maybe not do 100 Netflix shows. I think I might have done that over the pandemic. And just make a friend and talk to someone, right? The good news is that we can be in person. And so to do that. So those are it. So finally, I just want to say that And I share this story a lot. I talk about my mom and my grandmother a lot. And my mom told me when I was a dean, when I first became a dean, one of the dean titles, she said, I hope you don't take away other people's children the way your school took you away from us. I know she's a bit of a diva. There's a drama in her. And at the same time, I think about that in terms of the relationships that we have with you all as family members, and to be partners with you. And we acknowledge that your students come from all backgrounds and come from different parts of experiences in the world. And we want them to bring that here. That is who we admitted. And we know that you are a part of that. And so we will acknowledge that and we will honor that. And at the same time, as the music from Semisonic also says, closing time, time for you to go out to the places you will be from. We also want you to trust us, to leave them here, and know that this transformational experience will remind them always of where they are from, to honor that, and that they might be just a little changed when you get back, but hopefully in a much more improved version of themselves. Thank you for partnering with us. I would now like to introduce our fabulous, please let's give her a big round of applause, Director of our First Years Center, Catherine Pay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez, and our panelists for being with us this morning. And thank you, parents, for joining us so bright and early after I know many of you had a very long day yesterday and a hot one as well. So we're excited that you're here to be with us for Parent Family Orientation. So the next event is the Dean's Meetings for Families. Before you leave for that, I have a couple of reminders for you. The resource fair will take place over lunch. If you plan to attend and your student would like to go as well, now might be a good time to pull out your phone and text them to figure out a plan about where you want to meet. You may want to meet to have lunch in Bearsden or the Danforth University Center and then head to the resource fair, or vice versa. Please don't everyone try to get your sandwich at the same time. You will have a long line. We do have seating outside at both the Women's Building lawn outside of the Danforth University Center and on Elliott Lawn outside of Bearsden if you would prefer to eat outside. My pro tip is it may be a little less crowded at Bearsden today. So if you're looking for a quicker way to get your sandwich, that might be the place. Now let's get you to your Dean's Meetings for Families. So we have WUSAs who are staged at the back of the theater and will take you outside. They're gonna have a sign and walk backwards like a very fancy campus tour style. So I'm going to ask you to exit in the order that I list here so that you can all head to the correct location. So if you're in McKelvey Engineering, congratulations, you are in the correct place and you can just stay in your seat until everyone leaves. And then if you need to use the restroom, go grab a drink outside, et cetera, you can do that, but I ask for you to wait until we let everyone else be released. For Sam Fox, Art and Architecture, you are heading to Steinberg Auditorium and Steinberg Hall. So Art and Architecture, if your student is in Sam Fox, if you would please head towards the back. And my wonderful panelists, you all are free to head out to your next thing whenever you're ready. We're going to give Sam Fox just another second to get out.